say welcome to everyone. This is our Life Sciences and Healthcare Consortium. We had planned this as one of four industry consortiums as a role that business services wanted to do to reach out to specific industries to, have a dialogue on what are, labor and skill set challenges that are impacting your industry and impacting your specific company. And we have done one in manufacturing back in September of last year, and we did one in the trades and transportation field last December. And I think we got excellent discussion on what the needs are. And one of our roles here is always to bring together our educational partners with the companies, at the very least to provide introductions, but to further get people to understand that, maybe there's programs going on that these industry partners can participate in or potentially work on different curriculums that maybe meet their need. But when we had first set this one up for healthcare, obviously it was a booming industry, going back to February and March, and then COVID hit, and we know that had a major impact on, the healthcare industry as far as what they potentially could prepare for, what has happened due to shutdowns and elective surgery, which a lot of folks are very interested in this area. And now that that's been released to open back up, that's obviously created some issues with those providers getting back up to services, and certainly the clients that want to participate in elective surgery. And a lot of these things are excellent for health. So I know that's been part of the national debate that they've spent a lot of time looking at COVID patients and maybe not doing the very preliminary things that, are health concerns for a lot of folks out there, whether it be, heart disease or any other thing, surgeries to, repair limbs, knees, hip replacements, all of those things that affect quality of life. So certainly would like to get some thoughts moving forward on that from our participants. But that's all I'm going to say from an introduction. I do want to hear from everybody on the call. So I'll move around here. We have 19 participants. So you've heard from me. Tammy Stahlgren is our administrative coordinator for all our staff. She's the host of the meeting. And so we'll move on to our sector strategist, Maria Suarez.
Hi, good morning. Maria, sector strategist for healthcare and life sciences at CareerSource Tampa Bay. Just want to thank everyone for being here this morning, and thank Dan and John and everyone at CareerSource to kind of support and have this in a virtual platform today so that we can continue to connect with employers in Hillsborough County and education partners as well, to kind of come together on this forum, still through, working from home and working virtually. And I hope that this morning we can all get some extra information and move on to kind of move together, work to put everyone back to work.
All right, thank you, Maria. Next up, our CEO, John Flanagan, who will also offer some remarks on the next part of our agenda. But John, you're up.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everybody. And first and foremost, thanks for joining the Zoom meeting today. I, for one, I love technology, but I also love people. So I'm getting anxious to get in front of some folks again. Zoom's great, but it's a little sterile for my liking. So hopefully the next time we all meet, it'll be in person and it'll be safe, and then we can go from there. But thank you again for joining and taking some time out of your day. This is really meant for us to get direct feedback from you in regards to what your needs are, certainly post COVID-19, and how we can assist you in finding, some of those talent gaps that you're going to need to fill. the biggest news probably right now from CareerSource Tampa Bay is certainly our partnership with Hillsborough County and the CARES Act to the tune of about $25 million that we are going to use to put, no less than 2,000 people back to work or upskill. And the exciting thing about this is that it's significantly less, I'll just say the word, it sounds awful, but it's significantly less restrictive than our typical funding goes, because the idea is rapid reemployment and rapid retraining. So working with the county with the money directed by the U.S. Treasury, as opposed to a typical agency direction like you saw if you were around in 2008-9 with some of the funds that were drawn down to the local workforce boards through the American Reinvestment Recovery Act. This is much more flexible. And again, what we want to do is rapid reemployment. We want to work directly with you to help you fill some of the gaps that you're going to see. And then the other thing too is really looking at and being able to leverage some of the talent and some of the industries that, quite frankly, are going to be fairly slow to recover. Hospitality and tourism being one of them. There's just going to be a little bit of a lag there because they're driven by consumer demand. So we're going to be, working with a significant talent pool that will be delayed in the rehiring process. And this gives us an opportunity to have conversations with these folks and give these folks some tools to possibly look at, a career change or a career path change. So we want to be able to help in all that. The county, really gave the system the opportunity in order to do that. So I'm really excited. We are going to be, this program is going to be being kicked off, right away. So it's important that we work with you, get your feedback, figure out how we can help and how, from a hiring perspective or from a retraining perspective, and go from there. But again, significant resource, and we want to use it. And we want to assist employers that have been adversely affected by COVID-19 and help you get your workforce back to where it was, prior to this. So some other things, again, I think I talked about it. I'm looking forward to some in-house recruitment events and some of the relationships that Dan and his team have built with you all, getting to see your guys' faces again and getting you into the center or wherever we're going to hold these IHRs and getting you in front of some of the folks that are looking to either move on in their career within healthcare and life sciences, or B, looking maybe at a possible career change. So there's a significant part to this business that's always going to be human contact, and I'm looking forward to figuring out in the future how we merge technology with that. So I'm not going to be long-winded like I usually am. That's about all I have to say, and I'm happy to answer anybody's questions before, during, or after the event. So thanks, Dan. I appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Next up, Andrea from Tampa General, who's one of our newest board members. How are you?
Hi, all. Good morning.
We have Ann McGare. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from. You may have to unmute.
She's from Greystone Health. Maybe if she's having some technical difficulties.
Yes, I was. Sorry. I called into the phone and guess I couldn't hear me. Yep. Talent acquisition manager at Greystone Health. We own and manage skilled nursing facilities across the state.
Excellent. Where do you have a location in Hillsborough?
We have our corporate office in Tampa, and then we have we have home health needs in the Tampa Bay area, and we also have skilled facilities in St. Pete. Gotcha. But specifically Hillsborough is home health.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, let's see. I'm looking at here. How about Betsy? We talked a little bit. How are you? You want just like to tell everybody where you're from?
Good morning. Yes, Betsy Rizari with HR Contempo. We are a HR consulting firm supporting a lot of organizations, but mainly at this time, healthcare through all the crisis management of COVID-19. So glad to be here and participating today.
All right, thank you. How about Brandy Fernandez? How are you? You're need to unmute?
No, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes. perfectly.
Perfect. Yep, I'm with Greystone Health as well, along with Ann.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, I have Mr. Byron Clayton of Tampa Bay Works. Thanks for joining us today, Byron.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Good morning, everybody. I'm from Tampa Bay Works, and I was invited because we also serve the healthcare industry and manufacturing. We use a methodology. It's a nationally acclaimed methodology for using supply chain methods and principles to laser focus on hard to fill positions in certain sectors that drive the economy of our region. So obviously healthcare is very important to this region. So we've organized a healthcare collaborative which focus on specific high demand occupations. In this case, we focused, at least initially, we focused on medical laboratory scientists and also surgical technologists. We meet, it's more of a constant thing. We've been meeting every month for the most part until COVID hit, and there was a little pause. But we've been meeting monthly for, I think about a year or so now, a little bit over a year now. So we're, I think there's a lot of synergies between what we're doing and what CareerSource is doing, and we're exploring those synergies. Of course, the whole purpose is for both of us to help the healthcare industry here as much as we possibly can.
All right, thank you, Byron. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Judy Dorsey, our Chief Operating Officer for CareerSource Tampa Bay. Hi, Judy.
Hi, guys. How are you all? Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to continue these the consortiums even during these times. Very interesting what Byron was talking about. Great feedback for our CEO to hear in some of the projects that we have partnered with, one being the county on our CARES Act. So look forward to connecting with you all even now more so than before. And I look forward to hearing from everyone on the call. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. All right, we next have Kathy Holmes, a business liaison who handles the healthcare sector. So hi, Kathy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I look forward to reconnecting with everybody in the community again once this is getting started to phase 2 and so on.
All right, thank you. How about Chris Palovich? How are you?
I am fine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Tell us about yourself and your organization.
Okay. My name is Chris Palovich, and I'm the president of Premier Nursing Academy. We service both Hillsborough and Pinellas County. We established ourselves here roughly about a year and 2 months ago and have become the largest CNA provider throughout Tampa, and on track to become the largest provider throughout Florida from just our location in the Hillsborough, Tampa area by August of this year.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, you joining us today.
Absolutely. Heard there are some jobs that are needed.
Yes, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about them and some of the data set that I pulled up, and certainly have that discussion moving forward with some of the questionnaires that we've sent out to virtually everybody who registered early. Next up, Joshua Sims. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good.
So I'm here today with the Crisis Center Tampa Bay. So here I'm an HR coordinator. New to the role, so I know that previously we've had some people attend these, so kind of seeing what I can provide. I know we have a few open positions in our call center and also with our trans care ambulance service. So we have a few open positions.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Leaf Penrose, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So I'm the Dean for Health Sciences at Hillsborough Community College. Our Health Sciences division has 19 different programs covering a wide variety of health care areas. We'll be 21 programs in a couple of months when we start our surgical technology, first class of surgical technology students, and our first staff class of invasive cardiovascular, which is also known as cardiac cath. And we have been, we are also working with USF to try to help them as they are changing the model for their med lab program so that they can, they've been providing med lab students, graduates for a couple of decades now, I think, but their model has a low number of people being turned out every year. So they're working to change that model, and we're working to try to help them do that. We have both a credit and a non-credit side at Hillsborough Community College. Our credit side is, because of various accreditations, is not very fast to make changes. It takes a while to work through that bureaucracy, but we do have a non-credit side that does things, programs such as phlebotomy, CNA, patient care technician, EKG technologist, et cetera, CNAs. And they are much, much more nimble than we are about getting things done quickly for new changes. But on the credit side, we're a little bit, we're definitely slower. We have our biggest challenge has been that our campuses have all been closed. But about a month ago, we got permission for our health sciences and our PSAV, our workforce students, to come back to complete critical labs and simulations. So we've got students back on campus now, finishing up their spring and working on their summer courses for those folks to graduate. Are getting our EMT folks done so that they can go to work at TransCare, Josh. We are now just very, very slowly in health sciences. One of our biggest, our biggest thing that keeps us from putting out the number of students that the providers want at the end of the day is clinical assignments. Most of our health sciences programs need the students to go actually practice on real people. You can't teach a person how to start an IV over a computer. You can't teach someone how to put an endotracheal tube down over a computer. Those have to be face-to-face. They need those live experiences. And we're just now getting the first of our clinical partners agreeing to allow us to come back. So we're working through that process, and it's not like someone can flip a switch. It's more like it's opening up as a trickle, and we're hearing each of the providers is deciding what the criteria is for us to have our students returning. So we're starting to see that happening, and hopefully by the end of in the next month or so, we'll have most of our students back at the clinical sites finishing up. So that's where we're at right now.
All right, thank you for that very important update. I knew, and obviously even from Career Source, we were in a learning mode and a listening mode all the time, and grateful to hear about all the great work you're doing in collaboration with USF and even your own individual programs and how that interfaces with the healthcare providers. And certainly, as we get to the end of the agenda, once you hear some of the other issues from our questionnaire, feel free to pipe in with any other input that you have. But thank you for joining us.
Sure. Well, I'd just like to say that the reason we exist is to serve the people of Hillsborough County and provide education, and to serve the businesses in Hillsborough County and provide the people with the training they need. And it doesn't matter to us whether it's us or somebody else. We just need to that's our job to make sure that people get the training they need and that the businesses get the employees they need. And if that's helping USF get theirs up and going, then that's fine. We're happy to do that as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Next up, Liza Bryan from M2 Gen. How are you doing?
Good morning. This is Lisa with M2 Gen. We are a national biotech subsidiary of Moffitt Cancer Center. We work with 19 cancer centers across the United States, and basically we partner with those cancer centers to collect both molecular and clinical data that we use in partnership with major pharma companies, to create cancer drugs for the cure for cancer. We also partner with pharma on clinical trials, and we're headquartered here out of Tampa, Florida.
Excellent, thank you. And also I'll take an opportunity to thank you again for helping us out with a series of educational seminars we did with the Recruiters Networking Group. I thought they went really well, and we certainly are going to look to the future to do more of those as well. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
All right, we have Mr. Steve Morey from the Tampa Bay Economic Development Commission. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. Good morning. How are you?
Good.
So I'm the Senior Vice President of Business Development at the Tampa Bay EDC. We work very closely with CareerSource. Our job is to recruit companies into Hillsborough County and work with existing companies. Healthcare and sciences is one of our targeted industries. So it's important for me to be on the call and understand from all of you experts what's going on in the industry.
All right, thank you. Susan Sen, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Thank you for having us. My name is Susan Sen. I'm with Guidewell Family of Companies, which includes Florida Blue. And I'm very happy to be here as part of this discussion this morning.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm looking at the list. I think, did I miss anyone? If I did, just go ahead and pipe up and introduce yourself, but I think everybody's covered so far. Okay, I think we got that right. All right, well, we'll move on with our agenda. John, do you want to add anything else from your perspective?
I think I'm good, Dan. I don't want to be too verbose, but really just wanted to highlight CARES and how we can help. And also, you know, it was good to hear that Byron was on the call, particularly about how what they're doing in manufacturing can kind of, you know, the model itself, the talent pipeline management model can transfer over in, you know, across industry. So love the work that Tampa Bay Works and partnership are doing on that aspect. And we'll see what synergies we can find there to, like Byron said, you know, we're here to help, you know, help the industry with their talent needs. So that's all I'm going to say. Thanks very much, Dan.
All right, thank you. All right, Tammy, we'll move on to some key data from the life sciences healthcare industry. I have a few slides, and for the most part, it's just data that we've derived from this industry, kind of to maybe whet the appetite for you know, a discussion. I'll start with life sciences. We partner with MZ, which is a really global information, labor market information firm, one of the best, obviously, in that we've come apart. And we can pull reports on a variety of industries and areas. And what I wanted to do was kind of take a look at where we were, you know, in the midst of this COVID shutdown. So we pulled a report from April and May on, you know, job postings in the life sciences area. And obviously life sciences covers a lot of different areas in healthcare, but also in other, you know, potentially unrelated industries. But, you know, what we've seen is maybe a small reduction, 10% reduction in job postings from the same date last year. The average annual salary in life sciences is $43.5K, which is pretty good for the Tampa Bay area. 81% of the jobs require a BS degree or higher, so education, very important in this particular discipline. Also, 59% of the jobs that were posted required some level of experience, 2 to 6 years. From a standpoint of the companies looking for this type of talent. These are some of the companies that had the most postings in Hillsborough County: Leidos Holdings, Colsa, IQVIA, and Covance. Types of jobs that are being posted: natural sciences manager. There's a lot of IT professionals needed in this area, both for setting up networks, but also cybersecurity, as you can imagine, and sales representatives. A lot of need to work with these companies to, find customers, for their products. And then market research, obviously a big piece of this industry as well. And highest wages were found in the specific occupations with the greatest training requirements. So any, the PhDs that they're looking for in life sciences obviously would garner the best salaries with that. So next slide, please. So we did a separate one just for healthcare professionals. And again, we looked at the same time frame, COVID shutdown, how's this industry doing from a job creation standpoint. What we found, there was a pretty good reduction in job postings, almost a third from this date last year. Annual salary still pretty high in healthcare, even though there's a variety of positions that make up that average, from, doctors down to, the environmental specialists that are used in all the hospitals, from that standpoint. The reduction's interesting, and certainly I'd like to hear more from some of the folks on the meeting. Is this a result of COVID? Is this a result of elective surgery being shut down? Or is it a result that, healthcare industry was booming last year in Hillsborough County, and it's just, that's part of it anyway. Maybe we would have expected, a small reduction in 2020 without COVID. So I just found the data to be interesting and worthy of further discussion. 31% of the jobs in the healthcare sector in Hillsborough County require a BS degree or higher. 90% of the jobs require 2 or less years of experience. So it tells us a little bit from CareerSource Tampa Bay that, pipelines and educated professionals may be able to drop in very quickly right out of school or right out of a certification type program. Some of the companies that are doing the most hiring during this time, Advent Health, Baycare, HCA, Moffitt, Kindred. Some of the positions, registered nurses, are very high on the list still, big need in the county. Home health care, senior living, medical managers, and of course physicians. I don't know that we'll ever have enough physicians for such a growing county like Hillsborough. So we believe the COVID-19 effect is pronounced, but it looks like lower skilled jobs are still very much in demand in this sector. Next slide, please. And the next slide that I pulled up was kind of unrelated. We had a request from a few folks to say, where are the jobs? What industries are hiring? And so we pulled a generic report from MZ to say, where are those, who's still hiring? We know from CareerSource that manufacturing and the finance sector continue to hire folks. Insurance has been still very big in looking for skilled talent. But the number one position being recruited was registered nurses, and it wasn't even close. It was number one by a large margin, and we're actually assisting Advent Health. They're looking for several hundred registered nurses, for their expansion efforts, and maybe even particularly with their new building up at the Tampa Terrace area. We know the prohibition of elective surgery has had an impact. We would like to hear more from folks on here. Has that been an issue from a standpoint of furloughs, and are you getting your talent back? Probably preparation for higher numbers of COVID-19 patients factored in the workforce needs. I know a lot of hospitals were put on notice that they needed to be ready for such a huge influx of patients that may need respirators. And We know that occurred in several areas in the country, but really did not occur down here in the Tampa area. But certainly you've had to prepare for that moving forward, you know, from the standpoint of your workforce needs. Life sciences and healthcare were number 2 and number 3 of the top industries posting jobs. And management and support services are still in demand. You know, constantly looking, you know, for those folks to help, you know, move things forward in their organizations. So that's what we found early on in April. And obviously, in the environment we're in now, things change very quickly. So now we're into, you know, early June. I'd like to get some feedback from everybody on whether those are still issues for all of us to pay attention to. So that's the last slide I have. That's my contact information, and be glad to follow up with any of you, or you can follow up through Maria or Kathy Holmes, you know, going further. So that's what I have for just a quick data look, a snapshot of this sector. What I'd like to do is pull up the questions that we have compiled for this consortium. And what I'd like to do is just try to get, a lot of you have been given this ahead of time by Maria. So I'm looking, you know, from that standpoint, let's just try to have a more open discussion on some of these questions. And, you know, when we first scheduled this, we probably would have rephrased some of these questions a little bit, but we know we wanted to focus a little bit on the COVID-19 effect on the healthcare industry, and obviously whatever you guys on the call believe are issues with finding skilled talent, and how CareerSource Tampa Bay and our educational providers can assist in meeting that role. So first question, what are your current hiring needs? Does anybody on the call want to just input some of this? We don't need to go through everybody, but if any of these questions really resonate with your organization, you know, feel free to provide us some of the verbal input.
My name's Susan Sen. I represent Guidewell and our family of companies. We are in the fortunate place that COVID coincided with, the advent of COVID coincided with our annual hiring for open enrollment. So we are overall hiring over the summer and into the first week or two in September, 2 major classes of large volumes of hires. One is what we call our member care specialists. They are our customer service representatives on the phone with our customers on a daily basis. So in the Tampa area, in Hillsborough County, what that means is we are focusing on bilingual member care specialists, and those are 100% remote workers. From day one, on a regular basis, they are working from home. So we have been promoting those jobs in this area. I sit down in Sarasota working from my home, but we have been promoting those, and there's been a big push for the bilingual skills to service our bilingual customers. The second class of large volume hires is what we call our licensed health insurance agents. We hire these seasonal jobs every year to sell our Florida Blue health insurance, as well as we have other clients that we, outside of the state of Florida, that we sell for as well. All of these jobs in total will hire 1,200 of these licensed agents. They are all this year are going to be remote 100% of the time. We provide equipment. And our focus mainly is on licensed health insurance agents. We know from the state, if someone is not licensed right now, they can still get licensed and be considered. What the state is doing is assigning temporary licenses to everyone who is passing the pre kind of state exam training. And then we hire technology analytics roles as well. But those are our main focuses. And we were leery when we started really at the end of March and April, whether the COVID would possibly affect our hiring, as you know, people were temporarily or permanently losing jobs, whether that would mean our Florida Blue membership would go significantly down. We are not seeing, you know, up through the end of May, we are not seeing significant decreases in our membership, in part because we have done a lot of outreach in our community, in all of our communities in Florida, you know, reminding people if they've lost their coverage to come talk to us, because we can explore with them opportunities to obtain health insurance coverage at with subsidies at sometimes very little cost to individuals. So we are finding ourselves in that unique situation. And then the other thing I will share is that, and maybe this is a question later on, but we are finding that in some places, these are specific skill sets that we're looking for. And even though the unemployment rate has jumped significantly over the last couple of months, not necessarily in the skill sets that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Excellent input, as you know, for what's going on with Florida Blue as well. Anybody else have some input on current hiring needs? Want to chime in?
This is Lisa with M2Gen. We are fortunate to have been able to continue hiring through the COVID pandemic. However, we have a very highly skilled workforce, and a lot of our employees are masters or PhD or doctors. So we have to, unfortunately, go outside of the state of Florida a lot of times for our hires, and sometimes even outside of the country. So we have, though, been looking for candidates locally for our project managers. So we have a need for that and have been getting some good candidates. And we are also looking for some marketing and salespeople. But again, our work is very specialized. So the salespeople are actually coming from other areas of the country where pharma is more prevalent. But for the project manager positions and the marketing positions, we've been able to look at here locally. But for the most part, a lot of our hires are coming from out of state, or even in some instances out of the country.
So pharmaceutical experience is pretty important to you, or is that a pretty good skill set to start a conversation with some of those jobs?
So pharma is important to us because pharma is our client. So that is something that's very important, and we don't have a lot of major pharma here in Florida. So we do have to look outside of the state for those partners. And then also specifically from our schools, and I know HCC was on the call as well, we have tried to recruit from USF for some higher level candidates, specifically in healthcare, but unfortunately did not have candidates that we were able to find there. So we've been looking at UF and some other schools, particularly UF though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move on to the next question. What are the occupational skills shortages that you're facing? We've actually heard that already from Lisa and Susan. Anybody else want to offer some thoughts on this question on the call? And honestly, we've sent this questionnaire out to quite a few people. We do plan to compile all the results, the written results that we get back, and we'll share this with everybody who registered on the call. From that standpoint, we wanted to make sure the questionnaire got out ahead of time so people could respond. Okay, we'll move on. Has the COVID-19 pandemic changed your perspective on your respective hiring needs? Any thoughts on this? Tampa General, you want to weigh in on this? Has that anything changed from your perspective on this this area?
Hi, Dan. So I think, current critical needs for us, of course, a lot of the professions that you've talked through, nursing, respiratory therapy, lab professionals, I think now more than ever, when you think through the demands and the stress that's put on clinical lab professionals to work around the clock, especially with COVID testing. And then in terms of service level team members, so when you think of the operations have to remain with a clean facility, housekeeping, service level employees will continue to be a need as we kind of navigate that area. I think I've showed with this group and many other of our community and educational partners, surge techs and med techs, of course, are the skills that are most needed for current state and future state. And then when I think through kind of the perspectives that may have been changed around hiring needs, we're still hiring for several positions. The way we're doing it is a bit different now in terms of a lot of phone and a lot of video, with many candidates accepting positions without even meeting us or walking through the hospital, doing a lot of video tours. So it's changed the way that we hire. And then I think in terms of just general perspective of reiterating the message that we all chose a career in healthcare for a reason, and reassuring team members as they are being recruited and hired into the organization that they too will receive world-class training to ensure that they feel confident, safe, and knowledgeable to take care of any patient, whether they are COVID or non-COVID. So just has, I would say, expanded the conversations that we're having with team members, but all in all, continuing with operations just in a different and a more thoughtful manner is what I'd probably say.
Thank you. And actually brought up a very interesting point. For healthcare providers of providing this clean environment moving forward, and not that you weren't, you were always worried about bringing, infections into a hospital environment, but now with COVID, you've actually had to really ramp that up, and how that's, affected your ability to treat patients. And obviously we had a sidebar conversation before we started on, visitors to the hospital. That has changed dramatically on what they're allowed to do from a standpoint of visiting a patient or potentially, coming in, from that standpoint, because you have a workforce that you want to keep healthy, not to mention, patients that may be compromised by COVID-19 or anything else. So I know that's been a major concern, for hospitals in the region for sure. I think number 4 has been touched on for the most part by some of the comments. We'll move to number 5. What are some of your biggest retention problems, and what solutions have been implemented to solve it? And thinking from this standpoint, when we look at the amount of registered nurses that are being requested in this area, we know they're not all here in Hillsborough County or even in the state of Florida. Are you concerned about, keeping who you have, number one, as opposed to going and maybe moving on to a different position nearby? And, I'd like to know a little bit more, what solutions have you looked at to, have been implemented to solve it? And it doesn't even have to be registered nurses. It can be any medical provider type participants. So
And I'll tell you, at Tampa General Hospital, we actually had a unique shift. So when COVID came out, we had a lot of the nursing, surge tech, maybe lab traveling agencies reaching out through Department of Health listserv to anyone that was licensed or had a multi-state license, to recruit them to go into hot zones and take care of patients for 4, almost 6 times their pay. So we saw a fairly big shift in highly specialized veteran skill sets, I would call, probably your 15 years plus experience in some of those critical areas being pulled, and trying to weigh out loyalty and love for the area versus taking a travel or job that may take them more than a traditional 13-week contract and may have some challenges returning to either state of Florida or getting back into a position here after dealing with different populations and having isolation periods, things of that sort. But we saw a big shift in the very beginning with aggressive recruitment strategies to pull some of our folks. And then I will tell you, as things started level setting and better education and understanding came around COVID, we had many of our folks that said, I've changed my mind, would you take me back? And kind of did the balance of, do I want to leave the state versus stay with secure employer benefits and stability here? So we saw a little bit of a shift in that earlier, but since then have been very stable. And I would say retaining a lot of our workforce. Just looking at the news and seeing the unemployment rates, I think it is having a positive impact in terms of folks that do have roles, knowing if they're feeling secure, they're going to remain in a place where they feel secure and supported and taken care of. So knock on wood, we've been incredibly fortunate to retain a lot of our talent during this pandemic.
Excellent, and really excellent perspective. You know, some of us, at least I for certain, did not know how many, you know, in hotspots, you know, certainly nurses were being recruited, doctors to move to treat COVID, but I had no idea of the financial lure that was being given to them, you know, 4 to 6 times your salary. And, you know, to get these folks to move into, you know, what could be a potentially dangerous situation, but a situation where there was the highest need, whether it be New York City or even in our state, Miami, you know, things of that nature. And I'm sure, you know, all our hospitals were focusing on, hey, how do I keep my own folks here, or even if they leave, can I get them back, and are we ready to take them back? But that's very interesting perspective. So thanks for sharing that. What is your current training system for incumbent workers? Do you see any gaps in that training? We put this question on because we did have an incumbent worker training program that will conclude on June 30th. And we had a few interested inquiries from the healthcare industry, but we really didn't get anybody from that standpoint. We had some healthcare manufacturers. Bausch & Lomb is a participant in that incumbent worker training. But at the time, just more curious, is this something that the healthcare industry is interested in? You know, some upscale training, some things that we can assist with financially to allow some of these training programs to move forward and assist your company in paying for these training programs. So anybody want to, you know, touch base on this one?
So Dan, this is Lisa. I'm sorry, Betsy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I think, you know, something that organizations are starting to look into, it's how to support their workforce more in the wellness side of the mental health. I think that with the stress of family, you know, kids being out of school, financial burden for families that used to not have to buy a lot of groceries because the kids went to school and have their meals there, that is affecting a lot of people. So I think that even though we concentrate a lot on the technical side and the soft skills of employees, I think organization will really benefit from, and they don't have the resources or they don't have the financial means right now for providing organizations organizations training on how to help people cope with the stress and the mental fatigue that people have. So I think having training that can help organization provide their employees an avenue or how to express, you know, the stress that they have, even though you have the employee assistance program in some organization. A lot of the small to mid-sized organizations don't have that type of financials that they can offer that to their employees. So, you know, when you look into perspective of, hey, what are the training that people need? Yes, technical is good, soft skills is good, specific in the industry, but I would challenge all of us to start thinking outside of the box and start thinking, you know, how mental health is really impacting all of us in our organizations, how we have to deal with people having nervous breakdown or not being able to come to work because they're depressed, because they have so much financial burden in their families, which at the same time is affecting us because then we are scrambling to try to find somebody to take their shift or trying to get people to work. So I think, you know, looking at things very differently and a different perspective, I think mental health training is going to be very, very critical as we move forward in this new era. Thank you, Dan.
I think it's a very good point, and even more pertinent with the healthcare industry with, you know, there's been certainly a good outreach to thank this industry and their workers for, you know, working on the front lines and showing up for every shift and potentially, you know, putting themselves or their family in, you know, in potential danger from infection. And obviously that causes a lot of stress. I know in some of the nursing homes and assisted living facilities around, particularly in our area, some did a very good job of locking down their employees by saying, hey, we need you to stay here, but they've been separated from their families. And others who weren't as good at that have seen, you know, devastation and a lot of fatalities in their facilities. So I'm sure that has created a lot of mental stress from that standpoint. What could they have done differently? How do we deal with this moving forward? And all those are very pertinent to this discussion. You know, we have some of our own employees that had the same sort of concerns on coming back to work and interacting with the, you know, general public. So, you know, we've had to be cognizant of those concerns as well. But I think every business is dealing with to some degree, but certainly healthcare has been on the front lines of this as well. Next question, and I'm appreciative of Leaf being on here and giving us a good brief of what they do, but are the post-secondary institutions meeting demands of your industry? Is there any training programs you feel are inadequate or inappropriate for your specific company? And what would you suggest to change in those areas? So, you know, I'm kind of what we're looking here is, you know, the participants, are you all aware of what, do you recruit from USF and Hillsborough Community College? And if you don't, are there any things that they should take away from this that potentially they can implement that would help you find the skilled talent that you need?
I think, Dan, first, I just want to say I second what Betsy said about the training. I just wanted to make sure that that was captured as well, because I think that's really critical. And then moving on to your other question, I think the technical skills as far as the IT and the software development, that's where we're falling short. So I'm not a developer, but the languages that are new, that are out there, that are being requested from our IT department, specifically for development, QA, projects. We are seeing some students with those skills, but their level of skill is not as high as maybe other students that we're seeing. We were really fortunate to hire a student from USF who had finished his master's program and had the technical skills that we were looking for. So that was really good. But for some of the other new languages that are out there specific to IT, we actually had to go out of state to some of the other schools to try to recruit students for that technical skill. So that's probably a gap still that we're seeing.
Actually, and I'm glad, Lisa, you brought that up. Even in the MC data, I was a little surprised on the IT demand in both life sciences and healthcare. Leaf, do you incorporate any kind of IT exposure or in your curriculum with the variety of programs that you run at Hillsborough Community College?
Sure. So the question, I think that what Liza is talking about is specifically and solely software development and programming, and not ancillary training for the health sciences professionals. Is that correct, Liza?
Yeah, software development is where we're seeing a gap in terms of the new technology that's put out and being able to support it.
Sure. So we have two different areas within HCC that would address that. We have an AS division that teaches all of the different IT items, and I can put you in touch with the dean who takes care of that, so that we could respond and offer courses in whatever thing it is, whichever software that you're needing. We also have, but as I mentioned before, adding a new program, if it doesn't already fit into one of our existing areas, is a little bit slow on the credit side. But we have a non-credit side, and my understanding is that in many of the software areas, you're not looking for people to necessarily have a degree, but to have the knowledge and training. Is that correct?
Right. The degree is important. If they're close to getting their degree, then we'll hire them with the understanding that they'll complete their degree, because that's important for us. But we will hire them without the degree if they have the skill set. And we're even looking for people who have 1 to 2 years experience with certain technical skills, just because we need it so badly. Understood.
So the provision of years of experience is not something that we can address at the college, right? That's a postgraduate thing, but I can put you in touch with the right person. If you will send me, my email is lpenrose@hccfl.edu, and I can't find the chat in Zoom to post that, but it's lpenrose, like a pen you write with and a rose you smell, @hccfl.edu. And I'll make sure that you and he get together so that he can know what software needs you have available. And just like in our health sciences area, if there's a community need that is great enough to make a class, then we'll offer it.
That's perfect. I would actually like that. And I actually would like to have our heads of IT and clinical IT involved so they can speak directly to what they need, because we are finding a shortage.
Right, absolutely. Now we're much more nimble if you don't need the people to have college credit. So we have a non-credit side of the house that can put together a class in small sizes, and they can do it in a matter of weeks. Whereas if something doesn't fit into one of our existing areas and we have to create a whole new class or course or cohort or program, those can take us a long time, much longer than industry. I was in industry for a dozen years in health science and healthcare, but we're not nearly as nimble as they need us to be on the credit side. But on the non-credit side, if you have something, then I can put you in touch with that person as well. So just send me an email and I'll make sure that those people get in touch with you and set it up.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I think from the standpoint of, Dan, we're still on the incumbent worker training question, I'm assuming. So from a standpoint of what resources are available to assist with that, keep in mind that we set aside a significant portion of our dollars specifically for incumbent worker training, that we can assist and certainly Leif with you and with employers that are essentially writing a curriculum for upskilling, and we can help offset some of the cost of that. So I want to make sure that you know, Dan and his team, and I know they have, really kind of reach out to all of you, you know, for those incumbent worker training opportunities. It's a significant growth project for me. I want to be able to utilize it more, and certainly in industries like healthcare where it makes a lot of sense and there's some fairly low-hanging fruit there to do it. So please keep that in mind, that, you know, as you are talking about this with the employers in the region, understand that we can be able to provide some resources from a cost offset perspective as well.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Chris, any thoughts on question 7 from your perspective of your healthcare training programs?
So I think right now our healthcare training program, we've seen a huge uptick in the number of enrollments that we're getting. I think specifically from students that are looking at changing careers, changing career paths, displaced workers, whatever it might be. What I would like to do is, since our pipeline is so strong right now, my goal is to flood the market from the front end and matriculate the masses, in so many words, that they could continue on to HHC, USF, wherever they might be going. Because I think in the past, historically, we have found a lot of vibrant, passionate individuals that didn't have the opportunity to continue on with healthcare, primarily due to cost. If we can eliminate that, which we're doing with our employment partners right now, we can capture this new student demographic, transition them through employment with any of the facilities that we're working with right now as a CNA, and help them advance further. So Leaf, love to continue conversations. I know you have other nursing programs for a feeder system for our graduates. Because I can tell you we're graduating 30 to 45 students every 4 weeks. We have not stopped during the pandemic. Florida Board of Nursing has allowed us to bring all in-house. So all of our clinicals are happening in our own sim lab. But we have a lot of students, especially the students that started on Monday. I mean, they're all BSNRN career bound, MD career bound. We have 2 aspiring doctors, but those are the students I want in the class, because I think, in my opinion, that's going to be able to do 2 things. One, it's going to reduce the turnover because we have individuals going into the job for the right reasons, but secondarily increase the continuity of care at these facilities, because you're capturing students that want to have the educational career growth versus just a job to support the family for, and looking at just the dollars and cents. Let's get into change the candidate demographic that's coming into our classes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And honestly, I think both Maria and Kathy need to kind of meet with you a little bit more. I don't know how involved you are with CareerSource Tampa Bay. I'd like to get a better discussion on how we can get your candidates enrolled in Employ Florida, which is the state database we use, and those folks who are posting healthcare jobs and looking for the skill sets that you have. We need to get them matched up.
I agree. We are very involved with Pasco and Pinellas, not so much in Hillsborough, but now that we are having a lot more of our students coming from Hillsborough and affecting Hillsborough employers. I know Kindred is right, well, central and south, and several other Aramid and Vintage facilities. So they're all in Hillsborough County. It makes more sense that Marie and I have had the opportunity to talk, I think 2 weeks ago, we started this discussion, but love to continue that, as well as helping some of our grads advance further.
Yeah, because ultimately, you know, what I'm hearing from you is you have some people that are needed in this industry, and we are posting positions for our clients in the healthcare industry. So we just need to do a better job of matching these up. That's really our main role at CareerSource Tampa Bay, is matching talent to opportunity. And I'm so grateful that you jumped in on this meeting, because we definitely want to move that relationship further. Well, so we've heard a lot. What else would we like our educational partners to know? And I'm very optimistic on some of the conversations we've had already. Is there anything else that potentially anybody wants to put out on the record that the educational providers should know about your industry right now to particularly pay attention? And Byron, this is obviously a question for you as well.
Yeah, I realize that this meeting isn't for me to talk. It's really for you to hear from the healthcare providers. So I've purposely been pretty silent. But now that you've given me the opportunity to speak, I'll say a couple of things. First of all, Dean Penrose, he really characterized what I found in this region. And for those of you who don't know, I'm new to the region. I've worked in regions around the country on technology and workforce. What I've found here is that if there is an aggregated demand and need that is put in front of the healthcare providers, or I'm sorry, the talent providers, the educators, that's communicated clearly. I found that the educators here are all over it. I mean, they are very responsive, and that's fantastic. I think the key to that is the communication part. It's really digging down into the details and making sure that that's communicated from not just an employer at a time, which makes it very difficult for people to respond to, but from a group, like what you're doing here with the consortium, what we're doing with our collaborative. I think that's really the key to really aligning the resources and experience and talent that's coming out of the educational institutions to meet the exact needs of the employers. So that's about all I have to say about that. Where I have seen some deficiencies, I think it's mostly because the communication and the relationships and the linkages aren't really there, or that we have individual companies that are all coming at some of the educational institutions with common needs that are expressed differently. If that makes sense. It's all about trying to understand what the commonalities are, creating a common language to communicate it, and then communicating that to the talent providers. I think that's what works, and that's been proven around the country that it works. It's not easy, but it works.
No, thank you so much, Byron. I think communication is always the issue that we've seen in any industry, and obviously we're a bridge to the education community and the business community, and that's why these discussions are so important, and that's why they will continue. We don't solve all these problems with one short consortium. We continue to have a dialogue and build successes, very small successes as we move along, and knowing that everything changes anyway. Nobody predicted COVID was coming down the pike and, put this industry, really shook it up quite a bit from that standpoint. But understanding the current needs really is always going to be one of our roles. And it may change 6 months from now, but we want to be right in front and center with the folks in this industry, so we can, adjust anything from our programs or training assistance that we can do. Last question, pretty high level question. Anybody want to weigh in? Anything else that you've not heard? Has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way you view your workforce and your future needs? Okay, so we probably have addressed this question fairly well, at least today. But the one thing I wanted to add from this point is follow up on what John Flanagan had said with the CARES Act. We've received $25 million from the Board of County Commissioners for our county to develop both training programs for folks to potentially change careers. So we're having that discussion. But the part that the business services team is going to be more involved with is actually recruiting companies that want to participate and take on dislocated workers in an on-the-job training or a paid work experience contract. And how this will work is the CARES Act will allow us to pay 100% of the salary of these people who are placed in any Hillsborough located company. And we will do this through the end of the year, 12/31/2020. And then there'll be potentially some additional monetary incentives to allow these companies to keep these people on staff. And hopefully the goal is to get them fully employed at that employer. So our goal, as John said, we have 1,000 people that we're going to try to place throughout all the industry sectors. But I understand, I mean, just from even today, I believe the healthcare industry can participate in that program. So I want to avail you of that opportunity. And shortly, even as early as next week, we're going to be very much promoting this program, and we'd love to see all our industry sectors in Hillsborough County participate, but certainly particularly the healthcare piece of it. We know with the high skill, the registered nurses, physicians, this is not a program that's going to work, but certainly on some of the lower skill type positions, even as Andrea said about, you know, housekeeping in a hospital. If there's opportunities that you believe that you can add staff and the CARES Act will, you know, 100% compensate that, you know, let us know, and we'll be glad to have a follow-up discussion and potentially enter into a contractual relationship using that CARES funding. So we have a lot of money to spend. We want to spend it in the correct way. We will be audited at the end of the day by the federal government. So we're going to be very conscious of where these people are going and that these are legitimate training opportunities that potentially could lead to a full employment. So be cognizant of that. And if you have further interest with that, you know, please reach out to Maria Suarez, and we can, you know, move forward with the details of that program as we move forward.
Thanks, Dan. And I appreciate the recap. And, you know, just from thinking off the top of my head, and, you know, certainly something that Susan talked about in regards to her needs from a licensed insurance standpoint, you know, even something like that, if you're identifying some people that might be a good fit, Susan, that might need a little bit of training, we have the ability to offset, you know, an OJT really, you know, it's thought of in regards to subsidization of wages, but what we really think of it is as we're assisting and offsetting the costs related to training. So, you know, Dan is right, you know, we can fund this 100% up to $12,000 over 90 days. So we really want to take advantage of particularly, you know, positions of need that are going to lead to a significant career pathway for some of these folks, and looking at folks, you know, certainly there's going to be a lot of folks looking to change industries as some industries are slow to re-onboard and other industries move quicker. Healthcare is certainly going to be one of those ones, in my opinion, that's going to move a little bit faster than some of the other agencies that will lag a little bit. So opportunities like that where we wouldn't traditionally think of that an OJT might fit would absolutely fit. You know, and just using Susan as an example was just listening to some of the needs that they have. You know, as long as they're a Hillsborough County resident and they've been adversely affected by COVID-19, meaning they've been laid off or they've had their hours reduced, we can work with you and work with that individual.
Okay, thank you, John. And obviously what we, you know, one of our focuses moving forward, we know that COVID has really decimated the hospitality industry. And in a perfect world, we would love all those folks to go back to their old job and we just flip the switch and we go back to 3% unemployment, realizing that in a perfect world we are not going to get all those people to go back. Maybe optimistically we can get 50% of them to go back to their old job, but that's going to leave a huge labor pool, either still struggling to get back into that industry as it slowly comes back, or maybe looking for a new opportunity to maybe look at a different industry that's maybe a little bit more protected from, things like a virus like COVID-19. So that's really the simple goal of the CARES Act is to put people back to work. I mean, seems simple, but very difficult in implementation. So we're gonna move forward with trying to meet the goals that the Hillsborough County government has asked us to do with the money, and hopefully, this industry can share into some of that and place some of these folks and let them move on with a career in healthcare that's probably higher paying potentially, but also maybe even more rewarding than they were doing. Leaf, I see your hand up. So
yeah, so Zoom doesn't have a raise a hand thing. Or at least I haven't seen it.
No, it does not.
Yeah, so just a couple of things that I'd like to share. And Andrea already knows these items that I'm about to share, but for some of the other folks on the call, when you talk about that in your survey that there are a high percentage of positions that are 2 years or less. So we think and we say, oh, a respiratory therapist is a 2-year training, an associate degree nurse is a 2-year training, a sonographer is a 2-year training, etc. They're not 2-year trainings. That's really a misnomer. When they're in the program, it's a 2-year program. But there's always prerequisites, and those prerequisites typically take somebody a year. So I just as something to keep in your mind, when you hear that we have almost all of our health sciences programs are 2-year programs, but they're not because of the prerequisites. And then the second thing, and again, Andrea knows this absolutely, all of our health sciences programs, or the majority of them, are what we call limited access. And that means that we can't accept as many people into the programs as who would like to be in the program. We limit the number of people who come into our programs. And the reason we limit them is because we can't guarantee the clinical training, which is an integral part of their education. And so our limiting factor for almost every single health science program is clinical placement. And so I was a radiology administrator for 10 years. And so I understand that the hospitals are balancing the extra stress of having a student there in their clinical site with their need later on to have a new graduate available to them. And so the hospitals are constantly trying to balance that. But that's the thing, that we could double the size of our nursing program in August. I have classroom space, I have lab space, I can hire adjunct, I've got adjunct faculty, I could ramp up. What I can't do is I can't place those students clinically. Mm-hmm. And so it's the bottleneck in almost every single program we have. The governor did an executive order allowing us to waive, as Chris mentioned, to waive actual clinical with simulation, but that's not going to last forever. And the educational professionals that we have in my division, they know that there's a reason why we have clinical placement, and because that's in a perfect world, that's the best way to do it. And we don't expect the executive order waiving that clinical requirement to extend past the summer. But that's, it's not that we don't want to put out more nurses. It's not that we don't want to have more med lab scientists, or we don't want to have more respiratory. I've got the room, I've got the labs, I've got a brand new health sciences building that we could work. It's almost always the clinical placement.
So can I add something onto that?
Sure.
So that is absolutely the bottleneck when you start to look at the flow of talent. Many of the occupations on the healthcare side, and this is around the country, the clinical rotations are an issue. It's a bottleneck. I've started to look at some different consortiums around the country to see who's doing what. I've seen some things I'm investigating now. In fact, there's Detroit, Minneapolis, and Austin. There's some consortiums in those 3 cities that and this is around, it's around using clinical rotation software and being on the same platform, but it goes, especially in Detroit, it goes beyond that. So it's really trying to coordinate and getting people involved in how best to provide as many rotations as they can, and to manage them as, you know, as a group. So as I find information out, and Dean Penrose, you're involved in that through the collaborative. I will certainly be happy to pass along the information. John, Dan, and Maria, as I find out, as I progress in that research, I'll share the information with you as well.
Thank you, Byron, and thank you, Leaf. I mean, honestly, we do, it is, you would think, as hospitals are trying to stagger staff, retain staff, deal with the patient flow, needing talent, but wanting to know, how do I manage clinical rotations in a productive way and keep people safe? I'm sure it's, Andrea could probably relate. It's probably a headache that keeps people up at night. How do we manage that, moving forward? And hopefully it gets a little better, as we move through the summer and into the fall. And hopefully we don't have any resurgence or any new healthcare issues that we'll have to tackle. But it's a very important point you put out there. If you don't have that clinical experience, then you really can't get the full degree, and you can't be qualified. The only other point I would make is on based on your, I did say 90% of the jobs require 2 or less years of experience. It didn't really mention that your program was 2 or less years, the education piece, whether that's 2 or 3 or 4 years, including all the clinical, that's prior to that experience, from that standpoint. So it may be on a much lower level, from a standpoint of needs. Could be, the environmental health positions that Moffitt constantly is looking for, or even, folks in the CNA, or even, some of the positions that Susan elicited, for her firm as far as needs, from that standpoint. So just wanted
and
to.
This is Andrea. I just wanted to weigh in just for 2 seconds. One, deep appreciation for the academic partners. We would not have the talent we have in our region without such strong foundations with our academic partners. So hats off to them. Leith hit a lot of the facts nail on the head. One other thing that I think I might throw out to the group as we're thinking through how to leverage the funding and provide training in a meaningful way. We have, just at TGH, when you think of capacity, just shy of 150 affiliation agreements, academic affiliation agreements, which means that's nearly 150 partners that we have that we are providing clinical training to. So capacity, you are correct, at any organization is going to be a balancing act with training, providing quality service, and making it a meaningful partnership. But I do wonder, maybe in the private sector or the private practice offices, if that may too be an opportunity as we think through leveraging this funding, expanding training opportunities for maybe the mom and pop private practice groups that also, would provide some training and teach basic healthcare from, proper PPE utilization and donning and doffing, or, the proper techniques for infectious prevention. So just something to think through, as, there's a lot of large healthcare employers in the area that I think are also doing that juggling act. But if there's an opportunity to knock on some doors of the private practice groups, there might be some wins there where they've got some boots on the ground support, and they're also providing that clinical hands-on experience for some of the folks to get more prepared.
Good, thank you. Actually, thanks for bringing up that point. As we move forward with the CARES Act and the promotion and the marketing we're going to do with this, we hope that some of those other folks will hear about it and jump in. We're actually going to outreach to all our healthcare clients, and some of them are very small private providers, to see, who's a good fit for this funding, and who's a, you know, obviously from the candidate flow, who's a good fit for them to train and be able to move forward with it. But I appreciate those thoughts as well. In fact, I've learned a lot today. I had no idea you had 150 agreements with educational providers. That just seems like a huge number to manage, you know, from an HR standpoint, and still be able to get the kind of qualified talent that you're looking for. But we're up against 10 o'clock, and I am respectful of your time. The one thing we will do is we have recorded this meeting. We're going to go ahead and compile all the written responses that have been received from some of you and some of the other folks that had registered but did not join the meeting. And so Maria and Kathy are going to compile those moving forward, but I see lots of opportunity for CareerSource Tampa Bay to further engage, you know, with the participants on this consortium. So thank you very much for giving us 90 minutes of your busy day, and we'll certainly be back in touch here, hopefully in the next week or so, with some summary of this meeting and potentially some action items that we can all work on. So anybody else got any last thoughts as we have 1 minute on the meeting? Anything else?
I just wanted to say that once we get more information, I'll definitely be reaching out to everyone with the CARES Act and kind of the OJT and PWE program to see how we can connect you guys all to making sure that you can take advantage of that program. And also Senator Janek Cruz is having a job fair on July 22nd. If anyone is, I know I've been sending that out, but if you're still interested, we still have a few spots available for that job fair. And just thank you for being on the call today.
And I just want to say thank you to CareerSource for putting this consortium on and hearing our voice as businesses in the Tampa Bay community, and to our education partners too, as well, for being willing to partner with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. All right, that'll conclude. Anything I'll add about the Janek Cruz job fair on July 22nd, that is an in-person job fair. So we're excited both for the timing of it. We believe a lot of people will be coming off unemployment. So there should be a pretty robust group of candidates to participate, and we're thrilled that the senator is going to move forward with an in-person one, with obviously all the social distancing requirements that we're going to be putting into place. But should be a good one coming up, and we're fully supportive of that job fair and all the employers that are going to be there. So
in the past, those have been at the Dale Mabry campus HCC. Is that where this one's going to be?
No, she had it there last year because they were renovating Higgins Hall. It'll be back at Higgins Hall. So you guys will be off the hook for that big crowd of people coming.
All right.
So nearby for sure. But thank you all again for participating. We very much appreciate it, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.